Callias Foundation is a legal structure, a non-profit organization based in Berlin, which we founded in 2015. And it was meant and today serves as the center for all our activities, or the activities of the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra and the Silk Road Cultural Belt. So we have the reglement in our statutes, and from this the ongoing projects are developed by Callias Foundation. Yeah, first, I mean, it's, you know, when you are on your way to develop a specific relationship, for example, the relationship between musicians or my relationship as a conductor with a certain orchestra or with a certain audience, then it's, for me personally, it's very interesting to develop new ways and new tools and to set new goals. And one goal was to take the term Silk Road and the term New Silk Road and to really find a way of involving a local but also a global audience in developing this term, because it's such a global term. You can never, I can never alone, say this is a new Silk Road. So the situation in 2015 when this term suddenly became politically also very and economically very relevant to certain stakeholders, not in the musical world so much, but in other parts of life. I thought it would be very interesting from a European perspective and from a, let's say, Berlin perspective or basic human perspective, to look at this term from a musical perspective. And this is, as in the work of and in my life as a conductor, it's very important to get out of this or just to strive for new ideas and new ways of interacting with an audience and with an orchestra, and or contextualizing specific works and to develop new programs. Yeah, first, what I really like about our time is that we have, if you take this idea of discretion, in German it's ermessen. And discretion is it's this, in my understanding, is this space where we as human beings and as musicians and as artists, where we are allowed to measure and to estimate certain terms in a very free, in a very personal way. And if you take this, to give you an example, in the world of social media, there is Pinterest, and you have all these pin walls, these boards. And if you take a term like silk or road or culture or belt, and you ask, for example, a specific group of people, this can be an orchestra or this can be an audience, but this could be also the European citizens, or you ask people along the Silk Road, or even you ask the people all over the world. And each person would add to these 4 pin walls their ideas of quality, for example, their ideas what culture means to them, what silk means to them. For us, it's, as an orchestra, it's silk is an idea. Silk as an idea to understand different qualities. First of all, I believe that the term Silk Road cannot be monopolized. It cannot be occupied by, and should not be occupied by any sector or position, eastern, western, northern, southern. It can and should belong to the people. We always ask for the specific silk, for the specific. What's the silk? What's the very personal idea? And of course, this is a very Western or maybe even very European position, and it's a democratic position. But for me, as a conductor, it's we developed this Silk Road Cultural Belt as a platform. If you imagine, since 2015 and since we launched the Silk Road Cultural Belt, we have really thousands of personal sources of inspiration coming in from all around the world, like from Munich, from Esfahan, from Iran, from Dresden, Guadalajara, from Stockholm, Rotterdam, Sydney, Geneva, Vienna, many cities. It's both. It's multidimensional. It's first of all what I wanted to show and what I wanted to share is that if we allow that the term itself, silk or Silk Road, should be and could be composed by all these ideas, all these personal ideas of silk, then it could become really the Silk Road. It can be the European Silk Road or other Silk Roads, the personal Silk Road. But the principle would be that there is not one dominating idea or monopole of how to understand this term. And that's an artistic perspective, and it's a basic human perspective, because freedom means, for me personally, means also this space of discretion, this space of imagination, where I'm allowed to think beyond any limitations, in a way that this diversity and this enormous richness and wealth of ideas, of perception, can be shared. And this is some perspective. That's a new perspective for me as a conductor. To work in such a way with an audience. As a conductor, it's a great source of inspiration first. To learn from our audience, on a local level, on a regional, national, international, even on a global level. This is something I never expected. There are so many facets and elements which we can integrate in our work. Yeah, it affects very concretely my relationship towards my personal choice of specific works for a certain program. And if you, for example, if you have the source of inspiration from someone from Tübingen who shared, for example, the Klarinettenkonzert of Mozart, where there's one source of inspiration at the Silk Road Cultural Belt, then this is really an interesting opportunity to think, okay, what kind of program could fit well or work well in combination with such a source of inspiration, with Mozart, with the Klarinettenquintett. And so I can combine, based on this participation or based on this participatory element, I can develop programs actually together with an audience. Their share, their participation is, you could say, limited. But if I get an idea from a listener in Tal de Kurgan in Kazakhstan, or from Kinshasa, or from Buenos Aires, it just really it changes my relationship to an audience in general, and I think it's also for the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra, for the musicians, it strongly affected their perception. Actually, what actually the relationship with an audience could be on a local level, but also on a global level, digitally and analog. I started with the question how I can rethink and reimagine the role, the place, but also the purpose of classical music in society. Not only in the German society or in the European society, but in a large understanding or wide understanding. And what I understood from living and working in countries along the Silk Road and studying for 7 years at the State Conservatory in St. Petersburg and in New York and in London and in Vienna, different places, what I understood or learned is that we are still in a big competition between the reading of certain terms. If you take classical music, it's still very Eurocentric position mostly. Of course, nobody questions that the Viennese school is a great tree in the musical world. But there is classical music in India, there is classical music or an idea of classical music in China or in South America, in every part of the world. And this is also has been widely studied, and there has been a huge research, academic research in musicology, etc. But I was interested in the very personal. What is if we have these digital tools, and if we have the ability, thanks to the internet, thanks to Google, like this, that we can reach out to really literally to the entire planet. Then I thought, if we want to understand the role, the place, and the purpose of classical music in the life of people today, even in Afghanistan or in Togo we have to ask them. And this is the context for these questions, for the narrative, and for the Silk Road Cultural Belt, to learn what the role. And this is all about the silk. The silk is the role, the place, and the purpose. Yeah, one really beautiful experience was that one of the directors of the board of BMW Foundation, Markus Hipp, he was traveling in India. And he contacted me while he was traveling, and he said, "You know what? I was just in a taxi, and I spoke to the taxi driver, and oh, you're from Germany. You heard of the Conference of the Birds? So, yes, we are, we are supporting this project, the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra in Berlin." And it was at a moment where we really literally reached out to 8,000 people every day. And this was some real magic, and it remains. This process goes on because, you never know when you ask someone, how would you compose a Silk Road? Of course, you can never expect a sudden response, and that's not the purpose of this question. The purpose is to mobilize some hidden abilities, some hidden qualities, and creative potential, for example. So, after 3 years, suddenly one respond, maybe not even to our question, but just in time and space, was this proposal from Vienna, from Dr. Mario Holzner, to question and to propose the European perspective of a European Silk Road. So I thought, that's great. How would Europe compose a Silk Road? So through a big push, the 1 billion euro, as it was called in the editorial of the Financial Times. So it's like throwing a stone into a lake, and you never know, how the waves will, affect. But it had an effect, and if you are in the metro and suddenly, there comes some. You see, from Kinshasa, someone from Kinshasa sended his idea of silk and a personal source of inspiration, and it's always unexpected. You never know. It's like a lightning. And that's the quality I like. It's the unknown, the unexpected. You never know suddenly when it comes, when it affects. When I was searching or in the moment where I was searching for a connection actually between an idea like the Silk Road cultural belt, like a geographic zone, and the necessity to create a form for the relationship with a specific audience. So when you are approaching a global audience, of course, it needs a name. So the conference of the birds was a very good image of how to call such a global audience, which is spread all over the world like a swarm. First of all, through the platform itself. Then we created this so-called Why Silk hub. Like, why silk? What is the why? What is your why? Or the silk of your why? Or what? Or what for? Like this reflective element. We invented this actually social wall for our audience in Berlin, for the Berliner Dialogkonzerte, where in the foyer of the concert venue, the audience and the listeners can share a thought about about Haydn or one of the composers we are performing, and again to involve the listeners, involve the audience in this exchange, in this dialogue, in this specific frame of questions, where we in the end, where each of us can develop, for example, the ability to strive for the unknown, for the new, to strive for a very sharp perception of beauty, or a sharp perception of proportion and symmetry, and to exchange. Yeah, I'm always interested in new technologies, and the technology, for example, to prepare rehearsal or to prepare a program, a specific interpretation, needs a very open approach to mobilize, to maximum, really to involve the ideas, the strengths, the many abilities, the strong abilities, for example, of a team. When you have an orchestra, it's just such a heritage, it's such a rich, such a wealth of strong qualities, and I'm looking for this, for this silk, for these strong parts, to strengthen, to deepen, to widen a certain relationship, for example, with a specific audience. And in this regard, social media, Pinterest, you said, or Facebook, for me, it's an extension of the many channels, the many existing channels, how to approach an audience, how to approach new audiences. And this way to develop, for example, the relationship of what the role and the place and the purpose of classical music in the 21st century can be and should be. So for me, it's a potential. I always ask myself what the result should be. So if I'm thinking of an orchestra and we want to create a form of interaction, a kind of relationship which enables to create a musical experience which has like really all the elements of the real, of what only in a real moment of real time can happen. And then I have a situation like social distancing, and it's, suddenly you recognize, okay, you cannot see each other, you cannot rehearse together, you cannot see or interact with an audience on a physical level. And the same situation of social distancing or physical distancing you have to some extent when you have a platform like the Silk Road Cultural Belt and you're speaking about a new Silk Road. But new in the sense that there is no Silk Road yet. And this is in a certain way, it's like social distancing or it's a situation where you not yet could ask another person directly. So how would you compose a Silk Road, for example? So interact directly. And we have done this remote or with this enormous distance from one screen to another screen for 4 years now. And it's about the result, it's about the purpose in the end. It's about the question, what is the role and the place and the purpose of digital media for classical music and within classical music? And from my perspective, it can help and it can support conditions where the idea of an orchestra, and what is an orchestra? An orchestra is also an idea, it's an opportunity, but it needs conditions. So if from a perspective of social distancing, now we all together start to think and to reflect what it actually needs to create conditions for an orchestra, for a concert, and what my role as a listener or on stage, off stage, could be, what my piece of silk could be. When I'm in the audience, I have my ears. So within my ears, I have the ability to co-sound, the mitzuklingen in German. And that's also conditions. So if we don't have listeners, as a musician, if you don't have an orchestra, then the question arrives, okay, how can we create the conditions for an orchestra? And this is exactly this whole process the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra and Callias Foundation and we all the partners involved have done in this 5 years. This unlearning, as I would describe it, of all these processes and all these terms which to which we became so used. We are so used to that everything goes well. That there are all these conditions. That's all there. And if there is, like now in this crisis, suddenly the situation there is just this huge general pause, then there is also a space where you can start from zero, from a position where all the masks are, falling down, and where you suddenly can ask, if I would start from a zero position, how would I start? And in relation to a global term like a Silk Road, this opportunity to ask as many people as possible, not only, as I said, not only in Europe or along the Silk Road, but in China or in North America, South America, how they would create conditions for a concert, for an orchestra, for a rehearsal, for the relationship between the musicians, between the orchestra and the audience. And this is I can say that I know the answer, but I find it more interesting that I don't know the answer. I can say that I already became something, but I find more interesting that I'm still very, very far from becoming anything. Because this position of zero, of before the Silk Road, of before any concert, before any orchestra, for me gave the chance to reflect on this question of what is an orchestra? Well, actually, where does an orchestra start? Why is an orchestra only limited to a local background? So we said, okay, let's take the term Silk Road Symphony Orchestra and then invent and create the background for this term, the background for this orchestra. Not I am, but what is? And asking the audience, because there was no Silk Road Symphony Orchestra before in this form, and it's a Berlin-based project. We are in Europe, and it's just great to play with prejudgment. You say the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra, and still many people think, okay, this is something with the Silk Road. So I think, why not to allow this thought, to allow this delicate question that we can, and thanks to the internet, thanks to digital media, we could invent the background of this idea together with as many people as possible. And this is happening, and this is, of course, changing my relationship, and changed my relationship to many aspects of my work as a conductor, because it's a totally new dimension of responsibility, actually, for what you are listening, and and what we are listening. It's not just the position of being an artist going out on stage and you produce your interpretation, but there is a new what for. There is a different request for meaning. And I am very grateful that I can, or I hope, that my work and our ideas will contribute to this deep request in people I sense. And they are not satisfied with superficial or reproductive approaches. I'm not a digital conductor, there is artificial intelligence, and it's a new bread, of course, on the table, and we didn't try it yet, and we don't know the name of this bread because we didn't taste it yet. So I'm sure this name, this bread will get some name. But in the end, this digital reality or digital tools as a part of life is one of the biggest questions of our time. And I believe we should use these digital tools to develop hidden abilities first. And second, I'm convinced that it all should lead to a more real experience in the moment when there is a concert, a live concert, and that in this moment, all these digital tools, all our mobile phones, all our devices can be left, for a moment in the foyer, in the sauna, because music is in so many ways living from this real interaction. And I went very much into this abstract or digital space, and we can be all together in a Zoom rehearsal or a Zoom concert. But I want to help to deepen the sensibility that the real concert or this real interaction in a concert is something you cannot take away. One element I really like changed the relationship towards my understanding of what kind of technologies can be and should be involved in preparing actually a concert, preparing a rehearsal. And the fact that you start from a position of possibility, of not excluding enormous range of perspectives on one specific idea, like the Silk Road or the Silk Road cultural, the Belt or the Conference of the Birds, but to really allow that one score, a symphony, for example, when we made our first recording, we included one source of inspiration from a listener in New York, Hannah, and she left her idea somewhere in the Himalaya. It's Arvo Pärt, Cantus in Memoriam, Benjamin Britten. And one thing is to play this music, but another thing is to imagine that actually, even while preparing the rehearsal or while rehearsing, there is already a connection to someone both in the Himalaya and in New York, and you don't know this person personally. So it's a very there is a more global perception or more international or interconnected form of perception, but it's really widens for me personally, widens the horizon, and it's very hybrid in a sense that there is not one single solution. Maybe one thing I can add to the technology part. I think that as a conductor, I have to really, and I love to, I'm always striving to develop the ability to express certain aspects, or to bring out the certain strengths in a score to help to develop certain aesthetical abilities, or the ability to self-actualize, of where you stand in your life, what you got used to. And we are used to think the term Silk Road means ABC, but the large picture of the world in each of us, it's changing, and it should change all the time. And I just want to help to develop these abilities to, for example, to love this world as it is, and at the same time to change it, to improve it, and to develop the ability to strive for for the unknown, to love the unknown, to be open to all these things we don't know yet. I mean, the unknown is so much richer. And this is why I always like these confirming questions. As a technology, you can call it. It's certain technologies to mobilize the strengths in an orchestra, the talents in the musicians, in an audience. I want to develop, to support, to share my ability, if you call it this way, to bring a certain progress or to transform. And I just, if you have an audience which is open to new goals, to the goal to develop, to set together cultural goals, for example, in a context of a European perspective or the cultural dimension of a European Silk Road, and you involve, and it's music, the role of classical music becomes like a catalyst, like you are like a swarm who is mobilizing all these personal qualities, and I think this is part of the role and the place and the purpose of classical music. First, the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra is an orchestra. It's a possibility. We are not a state-funded orchestra. Which is rehearsing every day and performing on a regular basis. This is a question of funding, and Callias Foundation is working on it. Marifa Promotions is working on it, and my role is to keep the focus on the many possibilities the Silk Road Cultural Belt as a platform, as a geographical zone, as a narrative for Europe, as a frame of values or a set of values, as an orientation, can play in relation to the fragments I'm in charge of or I'm responsible for. It varies from 82 to 9. We have performed with different settings, different large, small, medium, and that's also a great part of it, because we can be very flexible. It's a very hybrid form. Like the background is constantly nurtured, and there's like a permanent motivation for all of us to because there is an audience, there is a community, a growing community. It's a growing team. We have a growing number of supporters, and it's always a question of the real resources, of course, when it comes to concerts. And Callias Foundation they're working very hard, to improve the financial situation, that we can perform, or that the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra can perform more often. We have a stable core of musicians who joined us from the very beginning. But again, it's due to our structure. We are more like a swarm. We come together, or a certain team comes together for a specific task, and I choose, or together with my colleagues, we choose to create a team. Where we believe and think for this specific task, it's the best setting. In this 5 years, I was mostly in charge of being also the musical director. But for the future, we are aiming to involve other conductors, colleagues, to really to widen possibilities, cooperations. But it's in the process. I think I understand after 5 years in this, like working on this large project, I learned many things which are not directly linked to the musical reality and also are not linked to my very musical life, because I needed to create this structure, I needed to create this business, I needed to create the foundation, the legal structure, like the framing, the setting, to develop this kind of tools, to develop these relationships, and to allow not only myself but many other people to take this term Silk Road and to play with it in a creative way, in a really open way. And that you have the frame to say, okay, that's your idea, and great, and feel free, to really use this opportunity of this discretion which we have as human beings. And what I learned is that we are so far away from that still. It seems, and I didn't expect that, it seems that for many people this is it's out of reach. For some reason, I don't know what happened, but for some reason, to really allow this kind of openness, this kind of, or this level of creativity in the end, for some reason it's perceived sometimes as something very radical, or something extreme, or something very like an utopia, or something like something utopian. I don't think at all. It's not utopian at all. It's just a matter of responsibility. It's a matter of goals, of supporting each other, of certain attitudes. I don't know yet, because I focused for 5 years on creating this, to create the conditions for such an approach. And now I'm in a stage of my life where I want to really bring it more and more into my personal practice as a conductor. Not only working with the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra, but working with other orchestras, as I did before. And this will be really interesting. I'm looking forward. It's really... the Silk Road Cultural Belt is with me, and the European Silk Road as an idea is there, and it's developing. So when I come to an orchestra today, when I work with an orchestra, I bring a different form of preparation. Of course, it's quite different or unusual, and it might be very challenging for many orchestras or for many colleagues, because I come more with questions, not so much with the one answer. But also I have an interpretation. I have a very specific idea. But the way of involving the strong parts of the people I'm working with. Really want to take the Y-Silk Hub as one element to different audiences, because the foyer. In every city and every concert hall you have mostly there's a foyer, and to share this opportunity that the process before the concert is also there is a large potential to prepare yourself as a listener. And to join already a conversation with an orchestra through a specific hashtag, responsible listeners, like to think of this, what does that mean for me? What does that mean? And this way to develop the idea of a European Silk Road, or a European perspective, a cultural dimension. Very much depends on the ideas and the openness and the readiness to cooperate from from like of different partners. Again, we have created certain tools, and I just see a huge potential to develop them together with others. It's not like I come with this, like with one recept, but it's more to really to get on a journey. And I see myself on a journey, on a musical journey. I'm like the musical tour guide, but it's a question of a dialogue, and I need to it needs initiatives. It needs the activity and the readiness and the openness of different partners to join this process. That's also a difficult question, because I don't, like I'm just at the start of a journey, like where these tools or this approach, the frame, the platform has been developed. It's there, and the basic trust is there. And now in the next stage, we are with different partners. We are now brainstorming. We are thinking how to include the Silk Road Cultural Belt as the platform, the idea of of a global audience, to connect an audience in Brussels or in Paris or in Vienna to this idea, this larger idea of the European Silk Road, and to involve them in this frame, in this set of questions, in this dialogue format, and to how to, via social media, this needs, of course, also some media cooperation. There are many ways of how to engage universities. The students, like this can be. There are many ways how to use these questions of reimagining certain aspects of our work. In 5 years, being with my both hands totally into music, and having found the conditions and the environment where I can serve as a conductor, but at the same time working for and working with a team and with an audience which understands that we all, each one of us, has a small part of responsibility in what we are listening. For me, it has a lot to do with gratitude, and it has a lot to do with independent thinking, in the sense of really autonomous clarity. It's difficult to learn about different qualities when we have not like some basic feeling of gratitude. Like, I mean, if you imagine planet Earth before the Silk Road, and you are walking on the road, and suddenly a stranger comes, and you have never seen such a different quality, then it's very helpful to have a basic gratitude for this difference, and then, or like to first trust, and then second proof, and proving, like to really have critical thinking to what does that mean? What he's saying, they are speaking about new Silk Road, and that means that in Hong Kong the democratic movement can suddenly is not allowed to have a different view, Hong Kong view. So how to be with that? And this really needs this autark, autonomy, or independent clarity. I would love to hear, to ask this question to as many people as possible, like not coming with an answer. Because I love the question, it's a great question, and in the question is so much potential. But I think it's when you run away from the necessity to distinguish, because what is the unique part of the Silk Road cultural belt? The unique part is that it shows so clearly that there is always something in the priority. Always. So there's always something first, second, because we choose. But it's dynamic, it's not static. It is all relative. But situative, we must make a clear choice and put, for example, Beethoven's Seventh Symphony first in a certain context, and another source of inspiration second. But this is dangerous, I find, when we run away or hide away, or to ignore this fact. Because if we start to learn what is first for another person in a specific situation of life, then it's much more easy to understand the different quality. For me personally, the irresponsibility is, when you are taking a global term like the Silk Road, I mean, it's a historical dimension. There is like this geographical dimension. There is political dimension. There is it's a huge space, huge. And if you try, this is something which is, you cannot mystify this. It cannot, or I believe it should never be, or it just is irresponsible to make a mythos out of it. It's not about who introduces whom to whom. East introduces itself to West. It's not about this, in my perception. It's much more personal. It has so much to do with what is happening in our life, in each of our life, now, in this moment. There I see the Silk Road, in what is happening. Twitter says Twitter is what it's happening, Silk Road, So the Silk Road as a term for me personally shows that, for example, peace or the calming, the necessity to, in this world to calm down. When you look at the democracy index, Norway, the Scandinavian countries, they really understand the meaning of these peace processes for democracy. And it's dangerous, this conflict between East and West. There's even like a mental war, because it's the question who is first. I believe this is irresponsible, because it's not about who is first. It's never about who's first. It's about hidden abilities, for example. It's about the ability to... it's about character, for example. It's about something very personal. Then it makes sense for me personally. Then this term could be something I could co-sound with, mitklingen. But if it's political, or if it's only economical, if it's only about who is first, then it doesn't make sense. There is the question there is always something in the priority, but it's not about who is in the priority. I just like to achieve maybe even well-known goals, but with a slightly different approach. with the goal to walk out of a rehearsal process, and even to walk out of a concert as a team together with some real result, with some real learning, where each member of the team really thinks, whoa, okay, I didn't expect that at all. Very strange, like in the and maybe even emotional, this is, I don't understand anything here. It's totally, it's to this, to that. But then you go into a process, and suddenly really there is some, due to a different perspective. There is a different form, or there can be a different form of interaction and of getting the strengths out of the score of a team. So yeah, I trust that the approach itself, the Silk Road Cultural Belt as a platform, as a set of questions, as a set of values, as an orientation. Also the Conference of the Birds as an audience, a global audience, but also as an idea of the best qualities in the other. That this is already challenging enough. I don't want to impose anything on anyone. So I trust that this global term itself has some effect. And I'm sure that the European perspective is a very, very unexpected and in a very positive way, and a very independent idea of challenging audiences, challenging soloists, challenging partners I'm working with. Yeah, we work mostly remote as an organization. We created a business structure where we have both non-profit and profit. They are like right hand, left hand, supporting each other. And we wanted and we needed to be maximum flexible so that we can adapt to any environmental circumstances. And we use a lot of, also in our work, digital tools like Monday.com, where you have you can organize all your work remote. It's a home, and it's a room. And in this room there is a very clear reglement. The reglement is defined by our statutes, and we are committed to transparency. We are registered in Berlin, and the center is of course also the board of directors. But it's we are obliged to serve our statutes. So all parts of the organization, or all our supporters, they have a common understanding, a growing common understanding what the common purpose is, and they are all laid out and defined in our statutes. Just from an organizational point of view, it's like a room, and in the center room, so to say, there are the three founders of Callias Foundation, and we decide together the core strategic decisions and goals and direction. But again, for me personally, I want to, as a musician and as a conductor, my goal is to step back from the organizational part and to really create it's always great if you build a startup, for example, or you build a company, or you create something, and then to pass it on to trustworthy hands. And this is the